Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Kevin. Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. We'll start as soon as James Saunders joins in. I see everyone is joining in as well. Hello, Natalie. Nice to have you here. Hello, Candy. Nice to have you here. I'm seeing some names I recognize. Hello, everyone. My table's shaking. All right, so we see this table's shaking a lot. Hello.
Hi.
How are you? Good night.
I am excellent. Thanks for having me on your live. I feel very privileged to be here.
Really? Good. I see you're still in your suit. You just came off broadcast.
Just came off air, and yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so we won't try to keep it too late at studio. We know it's a long day, and we just want to thank you again for joining us. I'm going to cover all things sports, journalism, sports reporting, what person can anticipate, can expect when it comes to covering a field such as yours. So everyone, good night. For those who don't know me, I'm Natasha Brown of Brownie Communication, Public Relations and Communications firm. And I will leave James, so you could introduce yourself. We'll start with that. Tell us about yourself.
I'm a journalist, very much acquainted with introducing others. When it comes to introducing yourself, it's always a challenge, particularly for me. Well, I'm James Saunders, sport anchor here at CCN TV6, sport commentator at Sportsmax, as well as Gem Radio. I have been a career journalist for as long as I can remember. I'm not going to call the number so that you can date me because then I would age myself. So I will just leave that up to the imagination. But I have been it's been over a decade, and as long as I can remember, I have been involved in journalism, and sport being a big part of that, a major part of that.
Okay. So what led you to journalism? Let's start with that. Your formative years, maybe as a student, were you always write? Well, for myself, I could say I was always the one creating the poems and the plays in school. So I knew I wanted to do communication. What was your formative years like as a student?
This is going to sound very frivolous, but Spider-Man. I was a big Spider-Man fan, and Peter Parker was a journalist, and everybody that I knew, a superhero, were journalists. I always had a passion for writing, though, something that I enjoyed from, even before secondary school. I loved writing, creative writing. I write essays, short stories. I had dreams of grandeur of writing books. And so for me, journalism was a natural step to take. Being involved in broadcast journalism, sorry, was something that I thought maybe I could do, but I always saw myself as a writer first. And then broadcasting happened, and I married both, and here I am today.
Okay. So seeing that you wanted to do it because as you mentioned Peter Parker, and so what was the next step? What was the next step in terms of
Well, I wrote
form
I
of
wrote a lot. So I wrote a lot, and I must credit my early teachers, Miss Edwards in particular, at the Corner Milton Secondary School. She really pushed us in terms of writing and the journalism aspect. And I remember quite vividly a number of years ago where we did a mock newscast, and I was the sport anchor for the mock newscast. I was in secondary school. And I remember imitating Roger Sant and wanting to be like Roger Sant and be the next Roger Sant. Who knew that several years later, it's something that I would be doing. For me, my journey would have started very unconventionally, because while I wanted to do it, there weren't many journalism programs around when I started, you know, and I really had no clue how to get started until one day, after a pep talk from one of my aunts, I decided to walk into a newspaper office, big and bold, big and bossy, as we say, and say, hey, I would like to speak to the editor. I want to be a journalist. Now, this woman looked at me, like a madman, just walking off the streets and like, okay, who are you again? What qualifications do you have? I said, well, I have English and I have literature and I love to write. And I think she was a bit taken aback by my boldness. So she said, hey, you know what? Write something for me and come back tomorrow and let me see it. Probably thinking that she had, shoo me away. On the way home, I saw a house that was down a landslide. I stepped out and I said, hey, I'm a journalist. And I came to cover this. And it was hit me with a little notepad and my pencil and a writing. Mm-hmm. And when I came back the next day, she was taken aback. But the fact, firstly, that I actually came back. And she offered me an internship there and then at the TNT Mirror. So that was quite a number of years ago. And, from there, I've been able to work my way up as an intern. I did internal programs and I did external programs as well outside of that. But, I think fundamentals that I learned back then at the TNT Mirror, which I think a lot of the major journalists, when you look back now, would have started their careers. It really helped me to become who I am today.
So did you always hop around? So, okay, you're starting an internship. Is it that you cover whatever because you're so excited? Or you're thrown into news, you're thrown into politics? Because, there's so much to learn on that news floor. It's so busy. What were you thrown into immediately and how did you fare?
Well, when you're just starting out and you're looking for that opportunity, you take whatever you get. One of the first assignments I covered was a murder. So me, fresh, coming into the field and boom, okay, we have a murder happening in Princestown and we need to cover it. And I remember going to the murder scene and feeling like if I was on an episode of CSI and wondering, I don't know how to feel, I feel as if, I'm in an episode of CSI and like I saw this on TV before. It was so surreal and having to go ask questions, liaise with police and get that information together. So that's where I started. I covered court, I covered politics, I covered, I started in San Fernando. So, I was in the old political space. I remember going to court and thinking, oh, this is not like Judge Judy. You were there trying to gather all of your information to put it together. So I was at the block, around the block. What I would say though, although I'm in sport now, that's not where I started. In fact, sport was was a by the way thing that I did. How I ended up in sport is the fact that I played sport. At the time, while I started off as a freelance journalist there, I was playing football professionally. I was at Starwood Strikers at the time. And I would write articles around that because, of course, naturally, you have access to people, your teammates. I would have access to that. So I started writing there. And even then, I was more in mainstream news until I got an opportunity on radio. And again, another chance opportunity, going to a radio station and there was a big sporting event happening and they said, hey, Saunders, you play sport, right? Could you talk about this? And I was like, before I had the time to say, sure, the microphone, and we're here with my boy James Saunders, and this is happening here. James, tell us about it. And be thrown on the spot, had to freestyle, as you say, and talk about it. And, the higher ups were so impressed because they were like, who is this guy, that's in the studio there talking about the sport? What is he doing here? Do you think he'd be interested in coming on and doing a sport program? And I started 2 days a week on radio there at I-95. And then from there, the rest is history. And that's how my sporting side of things evolved. But, started off on the beat.
Wow. I'm just shocked because a lot of people, the formal education and the essays and articles, and you just What about cold feet? You never experienced choking up, what to say? Give me some examples that we can learn from of maybe a memorable mistake or oops or learning experience that you had to go through.
Well, I would take a quote from the Incredible Hulk when they asked him how he learned to control his anger, from Bruce Banner turning into Hulk, and he said, well, the fact is that he's always angry. Because he's always angry, he's able to regulate it, And I took that to mean you're always going to be nervous, but you got to get the job done anyway. So are you going to get the job done looking how you feel, or are you going to get the job done because it has to get done anyway? My whole life has been, cliffhangers, like jumping from one unknown to the other. When I started off in the newspaper, coming in cold into the newspaper office and asking for the opportunity in radio, coming in cold, to even being offered the opportunity here at TV6. That was back in 2007. Joe Villafana, who was at I-95 at the time, and he got the opportunity to come here. He said, hey, James, I like what you do with sport. I wanted to come to TV6 with me. I was doing a radio show on the Sunday night at I-95, and he wanted me to come Monday morning at TV6, And I was like, but I'm doing well here. I don't know what's going to happen there. So I always, because of that, because of the fact that I always had to really make a feat to walk and jump from one unknown to the other, I got accustomed to doing things despite being afraid. One of my biggest bloopers, I think, would have happened while I was on radio, and it was a news program, and I was taking calls. And after about the third call, one of the listeners said, "Who are you talking to?" I said, "Well, what do you mean? Who am I talking to?" "Well, we're not hearing the other people, but we're hearing you responding." And it's because I forgot to slide up the fader so that everybody else could hear what was going on. So that would be one of the memorable bloopers, that I have. And also when I got the opportunity to do the World Cup, which was, again, tossed on the spot again. It was a really last-minute decision to toss me in. I remember at halftime in one of the matches, I remember the team that was playing. It was Japan. Japan 2, and my mind went blank. I couldn't remember who the team was, and I was like, and the halftime score is Japan 2, the other team 0. So I've had, what I've learned from those experiences is to not be too serious in the sense of not be too hard on yourself, but to laugh at yourself. And I think because of the fact that I laugh at myself quite regularly, when you do make a mistake, people laugh along with you,
Yes.
rather than at you.
Yes. And were you ever told that you had a voice for broadcasting? Because I know that's something of a requirement, like my voice. But some people have a voice that naturally has people wanting to put them in front of an audience. Was that ever indicated to you that you do have the voice or the temperament for it?
Yeah, I think it was. Even before I believed it myself. What I tell people, though, is that your voice is an instrument. Doesn't matter the type of voice that you have, it's the way that you use it. When I would have started, though, the commentary aspect of things would have started with me just shadowing. So, for example, you go to a football game and you're going along in the team bus and we are commentating. We're live here in Princestown at the grassy field and the team is getting ready, and just mocking and pretending, because I liked playing video games, football video games, and doing the commentary for it, and everybody would be like, "You, one, is real talk, and two, you have a voice for it," and I would be like, I couldn't hear what everybody else was hearing. My aunt, she recognized the talent, and she would let me do all the church announcements. So church announcements happening, or she would call me to read a passage of scripture in church, so that gave me a little confidence, speaking aloud in front of others. And, my friends would say, "Hey, James, if you do not make it as a broadcaster, we will come and find you wherever you are, because you have a gift of speaking the way you talk, etc., etc." And, I'll tell you a fun fact. I hated my voice. I hated hearing my voice, and I was like, what are those? What is this that people are talking about? It's something that I had to grow to personally understand, and then eventually love it. But that's really how I would have started. I must say thanks to my auntie Josephine Placid. a woman with an amazing voice herself. One of the first ones that saw the gift and really made room for me in giving me opportunities at church sports and church events. Every opportunity to grab a mic or to make an announcement, she would give it to me. And, I think that's where I grew in confidence.
Okay. So you have mentioned Joel Villafana, and I think most people who watch TV6 News, they would have known him as the guy. And the guy who, and then all of a sudden there's James Saunders. So I think I remember, where did Joel go? Who's James? Tell me what that was like, filling such a big shoes where everyone knows this personality, and now you're taking over a role that he once held on to and was well liked throughout the country.
Well, the thing is that, I never felt as if I was taking over from Joel because when I started, Joel was the first person to give me the opportunity here at TV6. And, when he left I-95, in fact, he started off, I played professional football, and the Pro League decided to have a media department. And, he knew I was playing and he knew that I wrote as well. So he invited me there, part of the Pro League media. So I wrote for the Pro League magazines, Pro League websites, so we had a relationship from there. And I saw him as a mentor, a big brother, so, working with Joel, I would say that 90% of the stuff that I would have learned, particularly in the formative part of my career, would have come from him. As a mentor, as a big brother, he would correct you here, guide you there. When you made a mistake, compliment you most. Joel saw talents in me that I didn't see. And his reinforcement of that, I think, is one of the biggest things that gave me the confidence to to know that this is something that I'm capable of doing. So because of that sort of mentorship relationship that we had, it almost felt as if I was just moving along with him and he was just handing me the baton and say, okay, I ran this leg, but as a team, you take it and you go here with it.
Okay. And earlier you also mentioned Roger Sant. So in Trinidad, we do have news anchors, sports news anchors who would have paved the way for yourself. Who are some other persons you would have looked up to, both locally, regionally, and internationally, in terms of this field?
Well, locally, definitely Roger Sant. I remember I even had the eye thing that he did when he made a point. He opened his eyes up, when he was making a point, And, I would love if somebody could find that tape that we did in secondary school. Roger Sant was the man back then. I remember you reaching home from practice just in time to make sure you caught Roger Sant with his sports. Whatever you were doing, if you didn't watch the start of the news, you had to come to see Roger Sant. So Roger Sant, definitely. Ashford Jackman. I love the way that he, not just presented, but the way he wrote. I think Ashford is one of the most underrated figures in local, broadcasting circles. In the way that he wrote, he was a storyteller. So I think I got that from him. I respect all of the great ones. Ruskin Mark, who I had the opportunity to work with as well. Ruskin's, extensive knowledge of sport. The deceased Dave Lamy, who I worked with in the end. And then, when we go abroad, people like Mark McKay from CNN, who today we're actually good friends now, we communicate regularly, and he would make jokes like, James, let's swap, you come and do what I'm doing, and, are people that I looked up to in world sport. From a commentary standpoint, the likes of Jeffrey Boycott. I always loved people who were great storytellers and, who, really had the art of storytelling in the way that they delivered. And, again, frivolous, forgive me because I look at a lot of cartoon, Scooby-Doo. There was a news anchor in Scooby-Doo. He almost came out of the TV when he spoke, and he was like, yes, I'm talking to you out there. I always, for some reason, what he came across to me as that person who connected directly with that person outside there. And that is something that I've always patterned in my style of delivery. That communicating to make you feel as if, hey, I'm talking to you out there specifically, like you feel like I'm coming out of the TV, so even that contributed. So I took a lot from a lot of different places, put it into one pot, state up and say, okay, this looks good, and that's the reason I think that I'm here right now.
Okay. Well, I just have to pause to tell there are two viewers who said they're big fans of yours. I didn't get their names, but we acknowledge.
Hi, everybody.
We acknowledge those.
Hi, Amanda. Lulu, hi.
So you mentioned the expressions and the colorful language that you'll use in sports reporting. And this is, of course, in contrast to news reporting, where you have to be, this happened, the murder happened, da, 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 da. So tell us some of the challenges in terms of painting a picture, because you don't just say the ball was caught. You have to say there was a beautiful dive and then So what are some of the challenges in your head when you have to paint a picture for the viewers or even the readers of a sports analysis or sports match or something? How do you paint those pictures?
Yeah, I just saw my good friend Nick from Barbados joined, and I remember the first time that I did commentary with him, halfway, by the second over, he put aside his headphone and he was like, "So you've got a superlative for everything. You've got a metaphor to describe everything." And he was in amazement. And this is my co-commentator. But what I would say, I said that to say this though. I think half of the job was done in my early upbringing, where my mother would have us read a lot of books, and I would read my literature books even before the school term started. So I read and I read. I think while I was going to school, I remember, and my mother always brings this back to my memory. But I came and I said, "School is boring," and she's like, "Why?" And I said, "Because I read everything in the library," and because of that, I have got a very, very vivid imagination. So for me, it doesn't feel challenging in terms of being colorful to describe. I like to use color as a way of connecting with my audience. I enjoy painting a picture that the first time you hear it, you understand exactly what I'm trying to say through the use of my language. Hi, Nick, how are you doing? So I think that came from my reading ability. Where I would say it has been challenging is the fact that accepting or the public accepting what I brought to the table. Because when I would have started, these uncles were this and that, and you didn't deviate too much, from within the confines of, so me coming from Maruga, all colorful and jolly and, happy and loud in the news, not everybody accepted it. While some people were like, "Wow, this is refreshing," some people were like, "That's a bit too much, Jack. Can you tone down, please? Can you calm it down a bit?" So it took a while, and, it took a while for people to accept it. How I counteracted it, though, was always like trying to ensure that the quality of my work didn't suffer in the expression of how I expressed it, so that, I can never be faulted for the quality of work. The style is something that is, preferential. I would prefer something differently from you. And I think over time, being able to stick with it has allowed a lot more people, to accept it. Where now, I would meet grandmothers and they would be quoting things that I said that I can't even remember. I remember saying, because of how distinct I think my style of presentation is.
Okay, so that brand for yourself, would you say?
Yeah, and it's something that I would always tell or give an advice to any young person looking to get into this field. Don't try to fit into the mold. All right. Quality is something that you can't compromise in terms of quality, but your style, that's distinctly yours. Find your unique value proposition, what you uniquely bring to the table, and that is what is really going to propel you within your career. I don't want to look at you, Natasha, and see another me. I don't want to look at you and see another. I want to see Natasha. There's some element within you that you bring to the table that is different from everybody else. So I always tell people to find what is unique about you and exploit that. And that is what really stamps and brands you.
Okay. Now, would you also, speaking of advice, would you also advise persons to play sport, and if they have an interest in sports reporting, they should get their feet wet, get the bruises, get the scars, know the professionals, what do you call it? All the associations, TTFA, and all of this.
There you go. There you go.
I tried.
Yeah, definitely. I would always advise it's not a requirement that you do, because I am aware of a lot of sport commentators even who've never kicked a lime in their life. But it helps. It helps that that you would have taken part at least to some extent, no matter what level, within the activities that you're talking about. It helps, you know, it helps you, and the passion that you deliver for something that you're involved in, it is a lot different from something that you know, arbitrarily speak about. You know, I would tell you, if I were to report crime, I might be the worst crime reporter ever, because I'm not that passionate about reporting crime. But when it comes to sport, naturally, I'm bubbly, you know, and you know, I'm a lot more expressive because it is something that I would have participated in, even if it's just jogging around your park or participating in a 5K race around the Queen's Park Savannah or something. Get involved, immerse yourself within it, and naturally it comes out. You know, that's another, you know, tip I would say. You know, anything that you'd love to get into, immerse yourself within it to get the best results out of it. Comes naturally.
Okay, great, great. So as we're looking at a career, you found a career in sports journalism. Let's talk about the future of it, because when I was in journalism school, they talked about radio being a dying art. They talked about sports being dead. It's already happened. It's in the past. Why do we need a sports page? Everybody knows the score. What do you think is the future of sports journalism when we look at things like artificial intelligence and these things doing the work for us? Or the fact that everybody knows the score. When France is playing Brazil, everybody knew who won. And then 7 o'clock, James is going to tell me who won already when I know who won. What do you think about the future of sports journalism?
Well, you're like any industry, it's evolving, you know, and we can't stay stagnant and stay the same place that we were 10 years ago. It's a lot different now, you know. People are looking at games on their phone. People will tell you more stats than you even know. I mean, you know, I will walk down the road now and the Lakers would lose to Denver Nuggets 2 seconds ago. And somebody asked me, yeah, so you hear what happened in the game? No, because I'm where you are right now. That's why I don't know. You know, I said that to say that, you know, people are more up to date in terms of what's going on now. But the element of being able to tell why what's happening matters is something only a human element could tell. You can have as many stats as you want. You still need somebody to tell you why this is impactful, why this is meaningful, and how does it matter to you? Which again comes back to the fundamental elements of journalism. The presentation and the style of it, and that's why I insist on finding that unique value proposition, that unique thing about you. Most people would listen to me, I would say, because of the way that I present, the style of presentation. So yes, they know the score, but they know that, you know, I would add something unique to it in terms of my presentation. You know, it's the same now where we find a lot of bloggers, well, personality bloggers, where people are drawn to their blogs, and not just for the information, but for the personalities. You know, when we would have started, that wasn't something that, you know, you would hear before. The news always took the precedent. But now, you know, personality and what you have to offer, and the way that you are able to tell me why this matters to me, and finding my tribe, you know, identifying with you as part of my tribe is what makes me, you know, one of the blogs that I look at religiously, Talk FCB, and the blogger's name is Jamie. I've never met Jamie in my life, but I feel compelled that every day, if Jamie uploads 4 videos, I have to hear Jamie's perspective on it, you know? And it's because of how unique he is in doing that. You know, it's all about evolving with the time. We don't want to be dinosaurs that, you know, go extinct. And we have to find ways to keep ourselves relevant. You know, I implore journalists or anybody involved in media to find creative outlets. It's like any product. Find where there's a demand or what there's a demand for, and try to find and use your skill set and your tools to satisfy that demand, and you will always be in demand.
Okay, well said. Okay, and another myth I would like to bust, if you can, is that when you present the news, you're just a newsreader. Like, is it true? I don't know. Do they hand you a script every day and say, all right, James, today you're reading this? Or what exactly is your role at TV6? How comprehensive is it?
Well, at TV6, you know, I would have started off in the trenches, being here from early morning, you know, going out on assignments. It's something that I rarely do today, you know, but I think I paid my dues in regards to that. But my role now has evolved to the point where I'm a presenter, yes, but I'm also in charge of all the copy. So all of the copies that that are presented, I then have to creatively to go through, edit firstly, and then creatively add my input to it. So I'm still very much involved in the news gathering process.
Okay.
I'm still very involved in terms of selecting, what goes where, what stories take priority, what we cover,
Mm-hmm.
and then the final execution of it.
Okay, good, good, good.
And by the way, I hate the word news gatherers. I detest our news readers. I'm a sport broadcast journalist.
Okay. That's why we have the
That's no indictment on you though. It's something that you hear all over.
yes, yes, or newsreader, or you're just gonna read, you know.
Yeah, you're just gonna read the news. No, I don't read the news. I
Okay,
present.
okay. And you also do the copy, the gathering of the stories, etc. So question, in terms of presenting, what is the window of time you would say TV6 has for news? 30 minutes? No, 50 minutes?
We're 90 minutes now, so we're hour and 30 minutes. As if an hour wasn't long enough, we have expanded. We've gone into extra time to use a sport jargon in terms of our news. So we've got an hour and a half to fill every night. In terms of sport, this is something I am the Watson Duke of TV6. I am negotiating every day for more time for sport. So every day I'm hashing it out with the news producer. Listen, none of my stories are going to be dropped today. Everything gets in. We've even gone up to 25 minutes one time. But typically we have between 12 and 15 minutes
Okay.
to put together. But if it were up to me, I mean, 1 hour and a half would have been all sports. TV6 would have been your station for sport.
Correct. And what is the pushback in terms of local versus international sports coverage? Because I know we have peak periods, for example, when we have our intercal, it's always highlights. When we have swimming meets, Olympics, there's a heavy focus on local. But what challenges do we have in terms of getting a local news story, sports news story in versus the NBA or golf or tennis tournaments, etc.?
I would say accessibility. It's international stuff. It's easily accessed. Statistics are easily accessed as well, versus local, where record keeping isn't one of our strong points here in Trinidad and Tobago. So Neil Johnson scored 10 goals today. How does this compare to 20 years ago? Who knows? Some old man at the side of the road maybe has to tell you, well, yeah, my grandson scored more than Neil Johnson. So it's a bit more difficult in terms of record keeping, in terms of having access to numbers and statistics, and as well as challenge that a lot of newsrooms face now is a lack of resources now, because we've become so digitalized now. A lot of newsrooms have cut budget, and in fact, you're competing with the Prime Minister's speech at the Hyatt versus a intercol match in Penal.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, who gets that priority? So finding the resources to be able to cover the wide array of sport that we have locally is something that we do face. Also, in terms of pecking order generally, in a newscast, let's say we have 3 editors editing, the priority will always be the stories that come ahead of sports. So sometimes it's a mad rush to get sport content in for a short time. I don't think it's something that is just a TV6 thing. I think it's across the industry in terms of sport. Sport is still seen as a hobby, and as a stepchild, as we jokingly always say. So it isn't quite given the sort of love, I would say, in terms of a broader picture of the news gathering. It isn't given as much attention as conventional news. What I have seen, though, is the emergence of a lot of local sporting channels, Sport Max being one of them,
Yeah.
regional channels that are dedicated to sports. So that is improvement over the last few years from what I've seen from where I started. And, hopefully traditional newsrooms would see the value in terms of using sport, or seeing the importance of sport to the broader picture of news, and give it the sort of respect as anything else.
Okay, good. And I myself have been to football matches and I would notice the cameraman is there. And before the match is even done, the cameraman is packing up, wrapping up his squad, and he's out of there. So so sometimes I wonder how can he miss, because you're not going to cut Prime Minister's press conference halfway through his conference. But watching I guess recording an entire football match is going to be tedious on any cameraman. So, and then of course he has to bring it back to the news and edit and so. So what are some of the challenges of covering a live sporting event, and how do you all overcome that in terms of going back to the newsroom now and going over the tapes, and what is that like?
Well, if you're speaking in terms of from a journalist perspective, one is it's long, you know, compared to a press conference. You go, it's an hour, you know, half hour, hour and a half. Average football game is 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and a half if there's a press conference after. A double header, that's 5 hours. It's a long period of time. Tight deadlines in terms of turnover. Let's say covering cricket in the morning and that game ends at 5 o'clock. Then that has to come in. A reporter has to go through the tape, take out time codes of the shots that he wants to use, script his story, match it to the time codes, send it to the editor, and still have that done in time. You know, for 7 o'clock newscast. It's quite difficult in terms of meeting the timelines. News, I would tell anybody, it's a very high stress environment because it's always about deadlines. Deadlines, and the deadlines are always tight. You know, while let's say a production company will do a documentary and take 30 days, 2 months to do a documentary, 6 months to do a documentary, we produce a 1.5 newscast every day in a couple hours. You know, and then you repeat it the other day and the day after that. You know, so that's one of the major challenges, particularly for something like sport that, you know, there are a lot of moments, and to really try and capture the essence of it, it takes a little more time than going to a press conference and just remembering a quote that the Prime Minister said and just go to that part and put it out.
Okay, let's jump to this question.
I'm going to take that question, and you could probably just, you know, rehash the question and I'll respond to it.
No, I didn't really.
Okay.
If I could... in reporting in your career, and have you seen it firsthand?
I have seen it. You know, when I started, you know, I would say, you know, I had the ability to do what I was doing a lot sooner. But many times I think that I have been overlooked in certain positions, and I mean, you know, I have evidence as well, because, you know, in some circles I didn't have the look of what it meant to look on TV. I mean, even my hairstyle, you know, it's a little rebellious for me, somewhat, you know, because what it does, it reminds me of where I started, you know, and people that look like me to remember that they too have a place doing what I did. I remember in certain circles, you know, I've been passed up for opportunities because of the fact that, you know, I didn't look, you know, like the people who were on TV at the time. And I remember one person coming to me secretly after a board meeting and said, you know, you highly recommended, they think that you do a good job, but they just feel that you're too for television. And, you know, that really hurt me, the early parts of it. And then, you know, eventually I had to say to myself, you know what, James, eventually, if you're good enough at something and you consistently show how good you are at something, you cannot be limited for very long. I remember when I started at a particular network at another country as well, you know, I would be a lot better. I was perhaps one of the better on-air presenters, but I would only be used for stuff behind the scenes. So you hear my voice, but you wouldn't see me, you know, and everybody that was on air had a particular look. And, you know, but, you know, I would tell anybody now in 2023, just, you know, when you feel that pushback or a sense of colorism or classism, because I think in the Caribbean we still suffer from a bit of classism and colorism, you know, work on developing you. You know, don't spend or waste energy, you know, being offended, you know, but work and spend that energy in bettering your craft. The cream will eventually always rise to the top. If something is as good as it says it is, it will show up if you continually excel at it.
Yes. And she seems to love your answer. She says, big props to not being limited. Yeah. not having anyone put limitations on you. So as we speak about your workload, what is it like? What is your day like? How flexible are your hours? How demanding is it to be a presenter at TV6? What is your day like? When does it start?
Well, from the time I get up, from the time I get up, the thing is, it is a lot lighter now than it would have been a number of years ago, because of the fact, of the position I'm in right now. But, as anybody who is involved in news knows, there's no real time off. I mean, you get home, um, something that you're following, you're already planning your next news day, your next news cycle, ensuring that people are assigned to relevant tasks or assignments that need to be carried out. You have to be aware of everything that's going on. From the time you wake up, somebody calling you to find out some sort of information in relation to an assignment, a task, how we go about doing something. So it's an all-day job, although I spend less hours now in the office as I would have, a number of years ago when I would have started. It's an all-day job, getting prepared, and so by the time I get to the newsroom, I'm already familiar with what our news cycle looks like, what our rundown looks like. It's just to get to editing. So a job maybe that I would have taken about 4 hours in the past, now I can quickly go through because I'm up to date with what's going on. I can quickly go through it, and so it is always demanding. It always calls for maximum attention. Sometimes you may always be on your phone, and people say, "You're always on your phone," but it's just part and parcel of the job as a journalist. You always have to be in the know and to keep abreast of what's going on. More so a commentator, which I'm heavily diverting into these days. It's almost, I tell people when I prepare to do commentary for a live game, it's almost like if I'm studying for an exam. So imagine studying for an exam every single day there's a game. So when everybody's getting ready for a game, oh yes, I'm getting to see this person play and that person play. This is me studying all night, going through statistics, seeing when last he scored a goal, seeing, and putting all that work in. The easiest part is actually delivering and doing the commentary, because most of the hard part would have been spent prepping for the game.
Yeah.
If you look at my notebooks, preparing for games, you'd swear it's an examination that you're getting ready for.
Wow. Okay. And when it comes to, from a public relations and communication standpoint, because sometimes we would pitch to the media, we want you to come to our games, we want you to come to Holy Name Sports, we want you to come to Backyard Sports and PNM Sports, and everybody's having a sports and a competition, etc. What do you look for in terms of news coverage, in terms of, okay, I have to attend this, let's make sure to go Moruga to attend that? What stands out for you in terms of someone reaching out to the sports room, asking for you to come and cover there?
I would say newsworthiness. That's the first thing a seasoned news person would look for. What is the newsworthiness in this? Sometimes people may ask, okay, come and cover our village sports. Yeah. Okay, who's taking part in the village sports? Well, some fellas from down the road. That's nice, and we'd really love to highlight the fellas from down the road. But our national audience, is that something that is as newsworthy? And and when you compare that with putting together a national sportscast or newscast, with so many competing elements, you always look for the most newsworthy elements. Now, if let's say Brian Lara was coming to a community to do the sports day, now that is something that is newsworthy. Brian Lara coming into a community, or maybe your sports day utilizes men, drug dealers from off of the block, making a difference. That's something that is newsworthy and relevant to a national audience. So I'd always tell people, always think of, I mean, it's difficult for a random Joe of the street to think newsworthiness of it. Yeah. But you always have to try and remind yourself, why is this important? Not to you, but to everybody else. Why does the nation need to hear this story? And that's how you really find the newsworthy element of it. Why is this important, or why is this relevant to a news organization? So, I know PR people, we got tons of requests coming in for stuff. Most times when the corporate communication person comes from a news background, they already curate the news angle in it, which in turn would attract media coverage. So even if it's in terms of doing music, find the element or the angle that is important to everybody else. maybe tying it into a social issue.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a positive artist, making music to combat the so-called murder music that is going on now. That's a news angle because this is relevant to a national audience versus it's relevant or it's important to me. Because if you ask anybody, anything that's going on is always important to somebody. But when you look from a national perspective, it has to be, important and relevant to a much wider pool.
Okay. And the question I have too is because we know that news is supposed to be unbiased. But when we look at sports, there's sponsorship involved, there's big money, there's these big corporations who sponsor sports teams all the time. So have you ever witnessed any kind of politics? I don't want to get you in trouble anyway. But I do know that sports has big money attached and they can sponsor ads on stations or in publications. Does that create you have to cover this element because X brand is involved and they sponsor us and that politics involved in the sports where money is involved?
Yeah, not necessarily. I don't think the pressure is as intense as you would get with hard news. Hard news, the line is it's a lot more, it's a lot firmer because of the fact that having any sort of bias, could be life and death to some people or change people's lives versus sports. Mentioning Barclays Premier League doesn't change the price of bread or does not affect the general populace as much as siding on the side of digital over B Mobile or swaying somebody's spending habits or changing somebody's thoughts about the government versus the opposition. So because of that, we are allowed a lot more flexibility in terms of doing that, and that's why sometimes you will even hear sports journalists now openly admitting, okay, I support this team, Barcelona. However, the beauty is you will always get some sort of partiality in coverage of anything. Your job is not necessarily to be totally impartial. I don't think anybody is totally impartial, but your job as a journalist is to be fair.
Yes.
And once you are fair, then it's free to openly in sports in particularly it's free to openly admit, okay, I stand on this side, but you should always be fair in your coverage rather than pretending and then you can see it in your work.
Okay, because if you're a fan of Neymar, you can tell chopping block, make sure and put all his goals. I don't know.
Oh, by the way, I am a fan of Neymar. I'm a big fan of Neymar.
But there's no way
I wish to see him one day live. That's one of my dreams, to see him live one day.
You will get it. You'll get it there. So you mentioned all the notes you take in your notebooks and all that. Is there any ritual you do or any way you hype up yourself before you go on air?
It's called café in Espanol. It's called coffee in English. I must have my cup of coffee before I go on air. It has been a ritual since as far as I can remember. And fun fact, I was never a coffee drinker. Maybe tea. And I always had to have a hot beverage, and it started with tea. And there was one day that there was no tea at the station. I was like, what am I going to do? Because if I don't have it, this is going to go awful. And that always seems to be the case. And I tried coffee, and that was it. That's where the love affair started. And now it's almost a prerequisite. I feel as if I don't have a cup of coffee, I have the most horrible nights. Everybody else may not agree, but in my head, I have the most horrible nights if I do not have a cup of coffee. So that's one of my rituals. I'm also very I'm always very relaxed. I'm not the type to be tense and uptight. You would find me dancing 2 seconds before the camera comes on, and that's just my thing. I have to be free and loose, and so that's it. That's the two rituals that I do have, but always I need to have a cup of coffee though. Don't judge me for it.
Very, very good. So anyone listening out there who's a fan, send James some coffee. And what I've been always curious about is the behind the scenes. So we know news starts at 7, and we catch Disha, Ramachan, or if Anselm was there, whatever. Where are you at this point? Are you behind the green screen? Are you sitting down? Are you seated? Are you waiting? Is someone in your ears telling you, okay, 5, 4, 3? What is that 7 o'clock rush like? Are you just waiting to be called on? Or what happens?
In typical sportsman fashion, I'm always racing against the clock. So, this is on my schedule getting. I get in, I head straight to the change room. Well, I go in, ensure that the rundown is prepared properly. I head straight to the change room. I run into rehearsals, and then from rehearsal, we have a technical rehearsal. From rehearsal, straight back to my desk, and do the news headlines. So at my desk, I'm editing scripts, going to copy, ensuring that grammar, the way it's presented, style of it, it's done. Rewriting some scripts in some instance, and then most times I'm at my desk with my hands going 90 miles an hour, editing scripts until we've got those IFBs in our ear. James, 1 minute to you. James, 30 seconds to you. James, where are you? 10 seconds. And 3, 2. Hello, everybody. Welcome to sports. That is my night. No lie. Anybody at TV6 can tell you that. I'm always the one racing to the newsroom, just getting into position 5 seconds before, they come on, because, I would love to, to come and be relaxed and to have great conversations, but typically it is racing against the clock, trying to finish edit, everything that I've got to edit and to get in before.
Wow. And there is a green screen behind you.
Yes, and I do my presentation in front of a green screen.
But
I'm not a fan of green screens. I'm a fan of headsets, but hey, it is what it is. Green screen is a new technology now, and because sometimes it does it makes my hair look weird. And sometimes I think I get unfair criticism because of the keying of the green screen, but it is what it is, potato.
So I'm going to tag a question someone asked with this question because the person wanted to know what courses in public speaking. Well, you said you were like a natural, I gather. But if there's any training that persons who want to get into the field in terms of public speaking, in terms of standing behind a green screen, like what was that like? I can't imagine getting accustomed to a screen behind me, being comfortable in front of the camera. Where can you guide them to find guidance?
Well, the thing is, never stop self-investing. I would have done it the reversed way. I would have started from back to front. So I would have started, got my opportunity, took it, built any experience, and then certified myself. These days, those courses are readily available. There is a good program at Costat, a journalism program at Costat. I know SPCS has they used to have at least a very hands-on program. These days, there are a lot of broadcasting courses, presentation courses. Even I myself, do lecture some of these courses in terms of public speaking, in terms of news writing and reporting and that sort of stuff. UE has a new CIES program as well too, communications as well as sport broadcasting, which I'm a level 2 in. I would have done those. Gavin Scoville. He's a director from South Africa. He does all the IPL games and stuff. He's the one that does the course, so very high level. So I would highly recommend that if you're looking to get into the field of commentary. Also, I would have done a lot of online courses. I would have even done like acting courses because presentation is a bit of acting. I mean, it's you presenting, but you're presenting, So even like, in terms of your facial expressions and your postures, I would have done acting courses. I would have done oral speaking courses. I would have done, just keep self-investing, even if it's not something as formal as a degree or, an associate or whatever. Self-invest in different skill sets and tools that you can add. Anything that you think would add to what you do, because, you can solve as many problems as you want based upon the tools that you have. You can't solve problems if you don't have the tools.
Yes.
So it's just about constant self-investment and equipping yourself with different tools, and and finding experience and finding mentors. Something that I find that, you know, a lot of newcomers don't pay much attention to in terms of finding mentors or people who are already involved. And, you know, sometimes just a shadow to pick their mind. I would have started Cecily Asun, you know, who gave me the opportunity when I started at the TNT Mirror, was one of those to me. Joel Villafana was another. You know, you know, in media, I am a one-man shop. There's nothing that I can't do in media. And because of the tools that I've developed, you know, I can shoot cameras, I can do lighting, I edit, I write, I present, you know, and all of those were tools that, you know, I did not come in knowing, but those were tools that I picked up along the way. I would go out to the cameraman, you know, ask questions, ask, can I shoot this? Okay, what am I doing here? How do I, you know, how do I frame a shot? How do I find the rules of thirds? You know, what do I look for when I'm editing? You know, so it's just about equipping yourself with different tools and different skill sets, and you know, and broadening your capacity. It's really all about capacity building, and with capacity building comes opportunities. There are opportunities that can only be unlocked when your capacity increases as an individual.
Well said. And you become more marketable, so that is key.
And you become more marketable.
Yeah.
So right now I'm learning. I'm brushing up on my linguistics because remember I had the opportunity once to work with ESPN, and JP Delamar was a commentator at the time, and you know I'm there shadowing JP, and you know he was there speaking with Landon Donovan, who was a USA player at the time. You know, so Landon, how you thought about the game? You know, what I thought about your fitness, and then after that burst out into Spanish and conducted a Spanish interview for ESPN. And I was like, damn. I was like, this is what I'm competing with. This is what I'm competing with. You know, they would pick somebody who's bilingual over me, who's monolingual, any single times, you know. So it's something that just have to continue developing and broadening your skill set. Even if it's just practicing with your YouTube blog or your Instagram blog, practice. To date, I still practice. If you hear me at home, you think I'm a madman. When I'm in the shower, I'm commentating. I'm looking at the TV, I'm commentating. Playing a video game, I'm commentating because I practice.
Yes.
You know, so when I do get the opportunity, people would say, "Wow, you're a natural." No, I just practice a lot.
Yes, well said. So we spoke about you being a brand earlier. Do you think you would have like a catchphrase or a closing? James.
I tell you, anybody over a certain age can tell you exactly what that catchphrase is. You know, I'll be walking down the road, catch you later. I'll be in a grocery, catch you later. I went to do an ECG at St. Augustine Private Hospital at the time. And, you know, this is me thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. And then the X-ray girl come, oh yeah, you're totally fine, but catch you later. I'm like, it's so funny, the things that people remember. You know, so catch you later is definitely one of my catchphrases. You know, be champions was one of them back in the day as well too. You know. So that's definitely what people remember all the time.
Did you say catch me later tonight?
I did. And people will not allow you to not say a catchphrase. You know, if there's one day that you decide, hey, I'm not gonna say it, somebody like, so why didn't say a thing last night? You know, and you know, people even look at the very subtle things. I'm one of the persons that I walk off of the set when I'm done.
Yes.
And I usually walk off to a particular direction. There was one day I decided to change directions because I get bored of doing the same thing over and over. I'm one of those people. And somebody was like, so why you didn't come off? Somebody's like, you're affecting my OCD because you came off on the wrong side. And I'm thinking, what? And then I remember, oh, right, I came off, I went the other way instead. You know? So the things that people remember sometimes, it's really amazing.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people are commenting about your catchphrase. Actually, I hope that doesn't mean you're leaving people, right? So,
doesn't mean that at all.
But we into the hour mark, so I don't want to keep it too long. I know you fresh off of set. And you mentioned one of your dreams is seeing Neymar play live. What is one of your most memorable moments in sports broadcasting? Maybe you witnessed Brian Lara once. I don't know. What stands out?
Well, I have so many stories with Brian Lara. I went to India to cover the cricket World Cup or the Cricket Champions League at the time, and I came with Brian Lara. Brian Lara is probably the second most famous person in India after Sachin Tendulkar. So we firstly, Brian Lara got a shout out in the plane, British Airways. So the captain was, "This is your captain speaking. Please prepare for landing. Keep your seatbelt securely fastened and put your hands together for the world's greatest batsman, Sir Brian Lara." I was like, what? Lara getting a shout out in the plane? So we got to the airport in Delhi and we land in Delhi, and I'm coming through. Larry Gomes, which is a West Indies legend, Brian Lara, Darren Ganga, myself, and some others coming through. And immigration is normally, if you ever travel, immigration is one of the most serious places in the world. Everybody looks serious, like they want to lock you up and send you back to your country. One of the immigration officers was like, "Excuse me, sir, can I speak to you?" I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Is that Brian Lara?" I was like, "Yeah, that is Brian Lara." It's like, "Please, sir, one photo, sir." Now there's a big sign on the wall, no photography here, immigration. So I was like, sure, let me ask him, So I was like, "Brian, this guy, he wants a photo." And Brian was like, "Yeah, sure." Immigration shut down. Any and everybody and the grandmother could have walked into India because the place was shut down. Immigration was shut down, and eventually they had to take Lara to a private entrance to get away. Such as how famous he is. But because of Brian Lara and company, I was able to sit down and have dinner and rub shoulders with the likes of Virat Kohli, Harbhajan Singh, and these guys. And they are thinking that I am a very important person, and I'm just nobody from Trinidad. So I am here thinking like, okay, James, do not cool sweat. Please stop vibrating right now because you look normal. This is something that you're doing every single day, just having, dinner with people that you admire on TV for years. So I think that's one of the moments that really stand out for me. And then they're talking to you regular. "Oh, so James, yeah, what do you think about so?" And you're trembling because you're like, wow, this is not normal. This is not normal. That is not Sachin Tendulkar sitting next to me. That is not Sachin. So I've had moments like those. Covering the World Cup in Brazil as well. Mario Balotelli was at the tunnel when Balotelli was coming out. And, Balotelli sports a more style as well. And I forgot that I was working. I went full groupie. I was like, "Hey, nobody know me. Here, I am a groupie." So I was like, Balotelli. He turned around, he had to walk like this. And he comes to me, he looked around. He saw me. He was like, listen. My legs, I don't know. The wind leaving your system. I've never fainted before, but that was the closest I was to fainting. My legs stopped working. I was like, wow. Listen, am I having a man crush here? I'm a man crush moment. So big up to Balotelli. So I've had some great moments as a result of what I do. It's something that I really enjoy. And, if you're really passionate about it, I would advise anybody to get into the field and just be passionate about what you do and work to becoming as good as you can.
But do you have photos?
Of course, if there are no photos, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. So you have photos of
Yeah, I have photos. I have one with Harbhajan Singh when I was coming out the elevator, the turbinator is what you call them. I have let me see. I have the only person that I haven't gotten Lionel Messi, unfortunately. But that will happen one day. That too shall happen. I mean, David Beckham, I have it with Hullet, Sepp Blatter. I have with Usain Bolt, even though the photographer lost my Usain Bolt, my Usain Bolt photo. But, I'm a firm believer if you don't have photos, it didn't happen, And, the thing is, when people see you as a colleague or equal, it is difficult to ask for a selfie sometimes because, they're talking to you one-on-one normal, like, yeah, I know James from down the road, and then in the middle of it, you still remembering that you're a groupie. But I didn't forget that I'm a groupie here and I really want a photo. So you play that you're fiddling with your phone and you're just like, "Hey, let me take a picture of myself," and then hopefully they comment it because you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that guy. Because people swarm them all over for photos sometimes. So sometimes you just have to play it cool and pretend like this is normal. This is normal. That is not Ronaldo. This is normal.
Good for you. Good for you. You did that.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I never got my Cristiano Ronaldo photos because You know, I just felt to him, I felt that type of way. Felt the type of way to ask him, yeah. Christy, yeah, you have it, yeah.
You should.
Oh, by the way, I'm a Barca fan, but I still have it.
And I see someone is hailing you out in particular. Hey, bro, we're at 262.
Yeah. I wonder if that's a Tula Guerra. If it is, shout out to Tula Guerra, the Trini Ronaldinho.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. If it is a Tula Guerra, that's one of the top players in Trinidad and Tobago right now, so shout out to Guerra, man.
Yeah, thanks for all that you do. Yeah. So, your name is pretty well known in Trinidad and Tobago as a sports commentator and presenter. How would you like to be remembered in your Maynard? It's Maynard.
Maynard. Yeah, big up to Maynard, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Top runner, man. Top runner. It's sports nonetheless, yeah.
Sports nonetheless, yes. How do you like to be remembered?
How would I like to be remembered? I would like to be remembered as somebody who, you know, made sport enjoyable, you know, made your experience as a sport fan better, you know. So when you think of memorable moments, you know, I want to be a person that's associated with that, you know. He assisted in, you know, even if I was a backdrop, in adding to your experience as a fan. I would love to be that person, you know, as a commentator in particular. When you think of, for example, Man City, who are on their way to winning the English Premiership title right now, you think of when they won their first title, and you hear this commentator, you hear him say, Aguero! That is iconic. That is a song track of a great experience, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I just want to be remembered as, you know, adding to the great experience or someone's great experience. Yeah, man. Much love to Brian Maynard, man. Brian Maynard is a top Trinidad and Tobago distance runner.
What do you think? What do you think about Atto Boland and his commentary in track and field?
One of my favorite moments. I should have added that to my list when I did commentary with Atto Boland. That was one of my pinch me moments. I was doing the National Track and Field Championship in Trinidad and Tobago. Because, by the way, when I was in secondary school, I sprinted. I ran track. So Atto Boland was always my role model. That was my hero. That was one of my biggest idols growing up. I even ran wearing a shades when I ran because Atto Boland ran with shades. When I won races, I did the point and your mouth saying something. I had no idea what he was saying, but when I won, I was because Atto Boland did it. And when I had the opportunity to do commentary with Atto Boland, that was one of the pinch me moments. Perhaps that's probably the most nervous I've ever felt in my life with doing any broadcast, and I have pictures of that as well. Yeah, nervous with Atto Boland sitting next to me. I'm like, yo, this is Atto Boland. This is the Atto Boland. You know, that was sitting me. That's up there. It probably is my most memorable moment as a sport commentator, I feel.
Okay. So, some time ago, I was listening to the radio and they asked what unifies Trinidad and Tobago. Another person called in and said sports. What do you think? I mean, you're in the field, you're integrating it, you cover it. What do you think the role of sports is in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of what it can do for us as a country? I mean, you would have witnessed our highs and our lows when it comes to our sporting athletes. What are your thoughts on the role of sports in our everyday life?
I think sports is a healthy escape for most people from reality. You know, in a time where there are so many competing negative interests in terms of drugs, alcohol abuse, and, you know, all sorts of vices and ills, sports is a healthy escape, you know, for a lot of people. It brings people a level of happiness. It's a stress reliever. It encourages more people to participate and take part in activities because, you know, they're trying to emulate their favorite heroes or just to be part of a community involved. It does community building. It builds communities. It builds capacity. You know, because of the nature of sport, there's so many rules and functions and parts that go together. You know, that builds capacity within it. You know, I always tell my boys when I'm coaching, you know, sport is what prepared me for life. I learned to be a leader through sport. I learned teamwork through sport. I learned discipline through sport. You know, and I think that sport is one of the biggest and most underrated building block within a society, particularly like ours. it also, offers a pathway for people to earn careers. I mean, I'm living proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make it as a athlete. I mean, I played professionally at one time, but still, I'm still able to earn a living through sport. I traveled to my first country through sport. I went to Venezuela for the first time. It was the first country I ever traveled to through sport. First time I went on a plane was through sport. First time I spoke a different language was through sport. First time sport really provided, many tools, and I think that sometimes we tend to treat sport as a hobby. I mean, we think of the social impact that we had in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think there's ever been a time that I saw Trinidad and Tobago come together like when we qualified for the World Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody,
Mm.
everybody came together and was celebrating. Bad men say, it's not a bad man today. And that's the level of happiness we saw when Argentina won the World Cup recently, what it did for Buenos Aires, in terms of uniting the country. A civil war in Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, was halted because of Didier Drogba, you know. And, we have such shining examples world over of how impactful sport is. It encourages young boys and teenagers to get active. We struggle in the Caribbean. We're one of the highest in the world in non-communicable diseases like diabetes and obesity, etc. Sport encourages people to take part in healthy lifestyles, healthy practices, because they want to emulate their favorite sportsmen, and I really would love to see, before I leave this earth, that we get to a point where, our leaders decide to utilize, the true power and value of sport to help shape our society, because I think it can make a better impact in the society. There are small microcosms of that happening already, but together, if it's more holistic and wider, I think we can have a lot bigger impact.
Well said. Well said. Let me get back professional. So I remember it was the last Olympics. One of your colleagues, I think she got minor backlash because she reported about one of our sprinters. I can't remember the exact story, but I think you know what I'm talking about, right? And it was on Twitter about how the negative news or the disappointing news of our performance was reported by the media. So sometimes, how do you, as a fan, because you're a fan of these athletes and sometimes they don't perform well, how do you pull back in terms of how to report our poor performance at times in the news?
Firstly, I'm a fan, and I think most sport journalists or broadcasters out there are fans. But I don't think it's our job, unless of course you're an analyst, to really shape people's opinion. What we do as journalists is present facts and allow the public and the fans of these athletes and teams to form their own opinion. That is good journalism. Preventing the facts. You have to be fair. As I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So everything happens within context as well. I remember one of the best interviews that I saw happened about 2 weeks ago, where Giannis Antetokounmpo, when the journalist asked him, "Are you is your team a failure?" And then he was like, "If you don't get a promotion, are you a failure?" It is all part of a learning curve, So we sometimes have to separate ourselves from the passion that we enjoy as fans, and in the interest of fairness, prevent the facts, put it within a context, and then allow the public to form their own opinions.
Excellent.
And I think sometimes some people cross that line, and that's why we get the backlash that they do.
Yes. I'm seeing a question here. What do you think? I guess is based on your opinion, is the right approach for a proper national team and even a successful athletes team? How should we approach forming a national team, a proper one?
I think it starts at the grassroots level, at the youth level. Oftentimes, I think what we do is the other way around. We look at the senior team, the marquee team, and say, okay, yeah, these are the boys here. Let's pump money into them. But you've got to look at your pool and your supply. You can't have a waterfall if you don't have a stream upriver. And if you don't take care of that stream and that stream becomes polluted or that stream dries up, then your waterfall dries up as well. I don't think that much emphasis is placed on the grassroots program in terms of one, tooling our coaches, um, providing the right support for athletes in their formative years. Because every update could tell you that we lose most of our best athletes due to the fact that they never follow through with the sport. They never get past the grassroots level because, for them, they never saw pathways beyond that. It was never a viable option. And, sometimes I blame our leaders for not creating better avenues and programs, whereby a person who is 6, 7 years old can look and say, yeah, boy, I could see my way all the way from here heading to the national team or perhaps going abroad, and I think we do ourselves an injustice by doing that, so I think, we have to pay less emphasis, in terms of facilities and investing in our human resource, which is, the young persons at the grassroots levels.
Well said. Okay. I think now is a good time to wrap up. Yeah, I think so. It's nice.
It was fun.
It was just in your work clothes. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And I think we have a fairly sizable audience tonight. A lot of people learned a lot. They left their comments, they left their questions. And thank you so much for taking the time. I don't know if you want to leave any final thing, any in touch, any final message for your fans. You have fans. Yes. Anything you want to say?
I'd probably leave by saying, continue to, don't give up on, whatever goal, dream or purpose that God has placed in your heart. Nurture it, become the best version of it. You don't necessarily have to, and don't compare your progress or yourself with other people. Compare yourself with where you were in the past to where you are now. Just work on being the best version of you. And when you become the best version of you, that's the most that you can ask for, And also, don't make excuses. Don't make excuses, but just keep pushing, If anything that you remember from this life, from a country boy who grew up in the country, had a tight tongue, a lisp, and now is an internationally and regionally renowned commentator, is commit to trying. Always commit to trying. You may not be in charge of any circumstance around you, but the only thing that you're in charge of is the effort that you commit to trying.
Well said. So I want to leave there. Catch you later. So I want to encourage everyone, if you're not following, follow at James Saunders TV on Instagram. Follow me. I'm at Brownie Comes. I do live every month. I'm a new journalist, so stay tuned for who I have next. You never know who it's going to be. So thank you, James, and Lisa.
Thank you.
We'll stay in touch.
All right. Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.